Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 2. I am very excited about this week. We are going to be taking a look at some classical literature, poetry rather. So, we're going to be taking a look at Dickinson and Frost, and then we're also going to be taking a look at haiku because that is the traditional poetry of Japan, and it can be very beautiful and enjoyable to read. They're short, to the point, and that's why a lot of people really enjoy reading them. But I just wanted to take the time to just make a few notes real quick. One, thank you for your great participation in discussions last week. Just remember, make your initial post by Wednesday. I know some of you didn't get into the class until the middle of the week. And so, of course, you have a little bit more time to complete that work. That's not your fault that it took us a little while for us to get you in there. But if you were a little bit late to class, go ahead and go into week 1 and do it anyway, even though the discussion posts have passed, and the rest of you go back and maybe meet some of your new classmates who got to added to the class a little bit later. But we do have week 2. Dickinson is what we're going to be discussing in the discussions this week. So make sure you take, there are 2 videos I want you to watch real quick, and then also a few short poems to read as a part of the discussion post for this week. Just a quick note, I did try to respond to as many of you as I could. I do apologize if I didn't get to yours. We got hit by illness in my house this week. My daughter had to miss school on Monday, and then both my 10-month-old baby and I caught it as well. He's actually still a little bit under the weather. Which is why I'm recording this at almost 9:30 at night on Sunday. I tried to record it earlier, but he was not feeling well, and I'm just now getting a moment to do it. So I greatly apologize if I didn't get a chance to respond to your discussion post. It was nothing to do with you. It was all on me. So I didn't want you to think I was ignoring you. So I'm just asking for a little bit of grace this week as I dealt with child illness and personal illness. Like, I went to bed at 8:30 twice this week. But I will try to respond to as many of your posts this week as I possibly can. So in the Dropbox over here, we will be discussing, you have 2 reflections. One's on Robert Frost and another haiku. And both Robert Frost and Emily Dickinson, we're also going to be talking a little bit about how their poetry has influenced more modern works and how we see it still showing up to this day. One other quick note I wanted to make that it will show up in the announcements. If I can get it to... There we go. Your first major assignment. I'm calling it the Poetry Project, and it's not very scary, and I promise you I'm not grading this like a poetry Nazi. That's just not who I am. So I just want you to think about the different types of poetry we are looking at this semester. We're looking at haiku this week, classic poems, poems that rhyme, free verse, songs as poems, and even when we get into Starfish, it's a book, but it's basically a girl who wrote a journal, and she wrote it in poetry form. So for this assignment, I want you to attempt your own poem. And I'm not looking for a poem that's going to go down in history as one of the greatest poems ever. I mean, if it winds up being that, that's amazing, and I'll be able to say they wrote that for my class. I just want you to remember that poetry is an artistic expression of thought and emotion. So it's really hard to judge. I mean, we can read a poem and go, I didn't like that. And just on a side note, anything that we read in this class, it's okay for you to tell me you didn't like it, because I don't like everything that I've ever read. I think I mentioned last week, I hate the book Moby Dick. Hate that book with a passion. It's okay if we don't like everything. I mean, look at movie reviews. If you go onto the website Rotten Tomatoes and click on any movie, like, there's always going to be someone who doesn't like it. Like, I think, what was it? My kids really liked the movie Paddington 2. And it had 100% fresh rating up until like last year or something, when one person got on there and said, this is a terrible movie. And I was like, oh, this is the best movie ever. But it's their opinion. And to me, poetry is kind of the same way. I mean, this is your expression, and it's really hard to judge. I mean, we can go in there and say that maybe the rhyme scheme was off a little bit, or it was overly disjointed, but sometimes being disjointed is on purpose. It can be an expression or a reflection of one's emotional state. So it's perfect, but it's also perfectly fine if you want to do a more traditional poem that has a rhyme scheme or the classic iambic pentameter of, shall I compare thee to a summer's day, a la Shakespeare, or the tritic octameter. Sorry, that's a really fun word to say. Of Poe's The Raven, once upon a midnight dreary, as I pondered weak and weary, where you have this alternate emphasis on the syllables. I'm not going to be grading this poem on if it's good or not, but the effort you've put into it, and the second part, which is a little bit below here. So you're going to write your poem, and it can be something funny. I mean, one of my favorite poems when I was little, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember exactly how it went, but basically it was skinny Mrs. Snipegin with her little pipekin set by the window, a cooling of her nose, set by the fire, warming of her toes. Fat Mrs. Wobblechin with her little double chin set by the window, a cooling off her nose. Says this one to that one, oh, you silly fat one. Close that window, you're going to bring my death. And I mean, it went on. And at the very end, the woman smoking the pipe threw her pipe across the room and hit the other woman, and she fell out the window. Terrible poem, probably subject matter, and not very PC with some of its terminology. But it was just a funny poem. I mean, think about the poem. I mean, most of our poems that we studied started as like, the childhood poems like Hey Diddle Diddle, The Cat and the Fiddle, The Cow Jumped Over the Moon, The Little Dog Laughed to See such sport, and the dish ran away with the spoon. I mean, it's just silly and funny, and it can be something like that. Or it could be something very serious, romantic or healing. Last year I had a student write, it was a series of poems. It was a series, I think it was 5 poems. And you can do a series if you want to. But basically it went through her experiences in an abusive relationship. So like her first poem was all about how she was so much in love with this person, and like the second poem was about how the abuse started, and the third poem was like her realization that this is not a good relationship. The fourth poem was the breaking up, and the fifth poem was her healing. And so it was a really powerful set of poems that would like really encompassed a really difficult part of her life. And you could do something like that. That would be great. Hopefully none of you have ever been in a situation like that, but you could write like a series of poems about even something happy that's happened in your life. So you write the poem, and then I want you to write an additional 1 to 2 page paper that explains your exigence. What was your motivation for writing this poem? Were you just wanting something funny or silly, or was it about the love of your life, or your, something hard that you went through and you just wanted to express that? What was your process for writing this poem? Like, I'm a eater when it comes to my writing. I have something that I jokingly call grading pants, and writing pants, and they're my stretchiest yoga pants in the world because I tend to munch a lot while I'm writing. Did you have writer's block? Did you have to like go for a walk around the room? Did it just hit you like lightning and you just wrote it in this fury of, 5-10 minutes and were like, this is amazing? Did you have to revise it a lot? Just tell me what your process was while you were writing this. Did you use any poetic devices? Did you want to have some metaphor in there, or a rhyme scheme, or use like a very specific meter as you're writing this? In your, let me switch back over to the class. In the content tab over here in your poetry unit, I did add, if you go down here, a submodule in your poetry module on poetic terms and devices. And if you click on that, it's just a list of different things that and their definitions. So that way you can kind of have a refresher of things that are used a lot in poems, that personification, or even like the alliteration where, like Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, that repetition of consonant sounds or whatever it is you want to potentially use in your poem to make emphasis and whatnot. And then what do you hope your audience will take away after reading this? Your audience obviously is me, but if you were to share it with someone else, do you want them to be thinking about life after death? Do you want them to be thinking about female empowerment? Do you want them to be thinking about the greatness of UT football? Whatever you really, really want your audience to get out of it, just share it with me. It doesn't have to be any type of great oration here. This project really is about you, because the purpose of this lit class, I mean, as I said, it's a little bit different than what you probably experienced in high school, is to explore your own relationship with reading various types of things. And in this case, also creating a particular genre of writing. So really, as long as you hit all of those elements and there aren't like any astronomical errors in in your writing, such as, misspelled words and craziness like that, you're probably going to get full credit on it. This is an effort project. As long as I can tell you have put effort into it and not just slap something together last minute, then you will get a very good grade on it. Now, the one thing I do is I always allow revisions. And so like after I read through your paper and I realize, okay, your poem's fine, but maybe in the second part here where I've asked you to do this exigence and your process and things like that, I feel like you didn't really give me anything. You just kind of slapped it together at the last minute right before it was due. I might ask for some revisions. I might be like, okay, here's a B, or a C, whatever. If you really want the A, if you can do these revisions for me, then I will increase your grade if you put forth this effort and make these corrections. I am a firm believer that writing is a process, writing is fluid. And if you put forth the effort to do good writing, then that writing needs to be rewarded. So just know that there's always a chance for it to be better. So just let me know if you have any questions on this. It's due on 9/29 at 11:59 p.m. And that's a little bit different. Most of your assignments are due on Sunday. This is due on a Friday because for most of you, except for those of you in Williamson County, that's going into fall break. And so I didn't want to have an assignment due when a lot of you might have been traveling, because I think my niece actually goes to Summit High School, and I was talking to her today and realized that y'all's fall break is about a week after everyone else's. And so we'll work with that when we get there. But just let me know if you have any questions or concerns. I'm always here if you need anything. And I hope all of you have a fantastic week.